Every single being suffers from addictions. It's not just you. It's also your mom, your dad, your ex-girlfriend, the president of the United States. All beings struggle with being addicted to numerous things, not just one or two things. Every person is addicted to dozens of things. And this is something that causes us lots of stress and suffering in our lives. In fact, I think that addictions are the number one thing that hold you back from realizing your full potential as a human being and just living a happy and fulfilled life. Our addictions rob us of time, money, happiness, fulfillment, and just being able to enjoy the simple things in life and to live a fully actualized life. So just because addictions are something that is super common, that doesn't mean that there's something that you need to live with. It's actually possible for you to know how to quit your addictions permanently. However, this is something that requires a very deep root level solution. It's not going to work if you're just using surface level solutions, if you're trying to just force yourself to quit your addiction or quitting cold turkey or whatever it is. There are many people in the world who are hopeless addicts who have tried dozens of ways to quit their addictions. They've tried cold turkey, they've tried weaning off, they've tried 12-step programs, they've tried hypnosis, they've tried replacing their addiction with something else. There's many things that are only surface level solutions that don't give you lasting change. And I know this because I'm someone who has struggled so much with addictions in my life. I was very addicted to playing video games, smoking cannabis, watching internet porn, eating junk food, thinking, daydreaming, being lost in my thoughts, listening to music. There are things that I was so addicted to, and I tried everything under the sun in order to quit, and I found that nothing worked until I was willing to actually take on a root level solution and really commit my life to changing my way that I'm relating to my addictions and pulling them out from the root. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to rewire your mind so that you can actually pull your addictions out from the root and you'll never have to struggle with them ever again. However, this is not going to be a quick fix solution. Addictions are a very deep-rooted problem, and it's going to require some effort and some work on your part. However, it is highly worth it, because when you can be free from addictions, I want you to just visualize what your life would look like, who you would become as a person if you weren't chained by this heavy burden of addiction. Think about the business you could start, or the vacations you could go on, the money you could make, the body you could have, the happiness and well-being you could have, the art that you could create. Think about that amazing art you could create, or the relationship you could have if you weren't chained down, all of your time and money and energy and focus going into these addictions that aren't serving you, that are actually sucking you dry of your life force energy. So it is possible to change, but it's going to require some effort. The first thing we need to do is to understand, just conceptually first, why addictions exist. One thing that is required for you to understand is just having a little bit of an open mind, okay? Because I want you to realize that every single person is struggling from numerous addictions. Gambling, porn, weed, drugs, socializing, validation, social media, entertaining yourself. There's tons of things that we're addicted to. All day we spend just slaves to our addictions. So the reason why it requires a little bit of open-mindedness is because this is such a deep level problem that you'd have to assume that it's going to require a deep level solution, which is going to require you just to change the way you're thinking about addiction. So what is the root cause of addiction? Very simply, the root cause of addiction is you attempting to feel safe and secure in your life. Addictions are basically coping mechanisms that help us feel good and help to kind of distract us from uncomfortable emotions and sensations that arise in our body. So feelings of fear, confusion, insecurity, these feelings like depression, anxiety, we don't want to face them directly. We don't know how to face them directly. So when we were very, very young, this addiction didn't just start when you were 15 years old or 16 years old. This addiction actually started when you were 1 year old, 2 years old, before you even knew how to speak. That's why these addictions are so difficult to pull up from the root, because they actually started from a pre-verbal state of your life. Before you even knew how to speak, you were already avoiding your uncomfortable sensations. Your parents would play games with you. They would entertain you. They would show you TV so that you didn't have to face the uncomfortableness of life. There's something that you were given to distract you. It could be milk. It could be love from your mother. It could be attention. It could be playing games, watching TV. Whatever it is, when you're very, very young, immediately you learn coping mechanisms for how to deal with the fear of just being alive, being a self, being an ego, being an organism existing in the world. Immediately, this is something that comes along with the baggage of fear, because since you exist and you're separate from the world, immediately there's all kinds of insecurity, like bad things can happen to you. As a separate self, you feel vulnerable. You feel like you always need to protect yourself. And when you just kind of surf in this empty void of boredom, you know, when just throughout the day you probably just feel bored for no reason. If you had nothing to do, nothing to entertain you, nothing to distract yourself with, nothing to focus on, you're just sitting in an empty room, you probably start to feel bored, correct? I know this firsthand. I get bored in like 10 seconds. Very quickly I can get bored. So the reason why you get bored, the root, the core of boredom, is you got to really ask yourself, what is boredom? Say, I'm bored, but what really is that? It's like this vague uncomfortableness, this vague anxiety. It's this fear of just sitting in that emptiness of just being. The root cause of all of your addictions is the inability to just sit in the emptiness of being. What does that mean? So when you're sitting alone in an empty room and there's nothing to entertain you, there's no one to talk to, there's nothing to do, immediately your mind starts to feel afraid. Your body even, it's not just a psychological thing, but it's a physiological thing as well. You feel uncomfortable. Like, what am I gonna do now? Like, because if you don't think about it, if you don't give yourself something to focus on, if you don't start daydreaming about something else, playing games with your hands, twiddling your thumbs, drawing stuff on the walls, imagine you're like locked in a solitary confinement cell. There's nothing to do. You're gonna have to start daydreaming and thinking of stuff just to occupy yourself, because if you don't do this, what's gonna happen? It's almost like your sense of self is going to dissolve in just the emptiness of being. So this is going to start to sound a little bit spiritual, but it's very important that you listen to this because I've tried dozens of ways to quit my addictions, and this is the root core problem. This is the only thing that works. So regardless of if it sounds spiritual and you don't like that, you need to just really be a little bit open-minded here because it's going to help you. At the core, the separate self, this ego, this who you think you are, your name, your story, this is actually not as solid as you think it is. Being a separate self isn't something that actually is real. And in truth, there is no separate self. There actually is no person that you are. And I know this sounds a little bit crazy. It's like, Adam, what do you mean there's no person that I am? That sounds retarded. No, this is actually the truth. This is the root cause of your addiction. This is actually why you spend so much time and energy and money invested into distracting yourself all day, running away. Why can't you just sit down in a room by yourself for 5 hours and do nothing and not daydream and just face emptiness? Why not? Think about it. Why can't you do that? There's something very fundamental that you're avoiding. This is a truth that's talked about in Buddhism, in Christianity, in Islam, in New Age spirituality, in even if you get into like quantum mechanics and science. Very, very basically what I want to say is that there is no ego. There is no self. The person that you think you are, with your name and your age and your gender and all of this, your story, your likes, your dislikes, all of this only exists when the mind is active. The ego, you, only exist when you're thinking about something or relating to something conceptually. So what your addiction is basically a tool for this false ego, which is just, it's like a mental habit pattern. It's a mental tendency. It was locked into place very deeply when you're very young, when you're 2 years old, 3 years old. Your body needs an imaginary self in order to perpetuate its survival. The problem is as you get older, it kind of acquires all of these very toxic ways of maintaining its existence. You can still be a healthy body and still live a great life without always needing to play games in your mind and tell stories and relate and play video games and scroll on social media and daydream and think about things and listen to music and have sex and call your friends on the phone and these addictions, gambling, smoking weed, all of these are just ways for you to just not face the truth that there's nobody home. What you are fundamentally is not a physical being. You don't actually exist. You are just the flow of existence. You are just the expression of mental activity. The mind has to keep running all the time, because if the mind were to stop running, if you were to just sit and be quiet for 5 hours, you would realize very quickly that your being does not contain any ego at all. There is no self. There is no person that is at the core of your body. It's just existence. Now, this isn't something bad. You don't have to be afraid of this. You don't have to be scared of this. There's nothing wrong with not existing, not having an ego. That's not bad. From the perspective of the ego, of course that's bad. But from the perspective of who you really are in truth, you could say your soul or your awareness, your consciousness, not your ego, your story of yourself, but just the witness, you, that sense of I am. That really exists. That's who you really are. Not a story of a person with a name and a gender and likes and dislikes. That's not who you really are. That's just a story that only exists when the mind is active. So ask yourself a question as a thought experiment. If my mind were to shut off completely and there would just be no thoughts, there would still be sensations and experience. You could still use the bathroom and eat food and go to work and make money. You could still live, but just imagine that your mind is perfectly quiet. What would be left over? Would there be this person who's named Adam, well, that's my name, not your name, but would there still be this person with this story and these fears and this anxiety? Notice, anxiety only exists when the mind is running. Depression, all of this, all of these suffering states, addiction, craving, this can only be a mental activity. All right, so now that you understand the root cause of addiction, essentially this ego mind, this habitual habit pattern of thinking that you are separate from all of being, the whole universe. You think you're separate. When you think you're separate from all of life, you don't feel connected to life. Now what happens is you feel vulnerable. You feel afraid. Now you need to do things to secure your existence. You need to be anxious about making money, and you need to just always entertain yourself with something, because you need to give your mind something to do so that it doesn't just rest and relax. And then you would realize the truth that you don't really exist in the way you think you do. And this is scary in the beginning. It's a little bit scary in the beginning because you may have many beliefs about the politics or about science or the government or life, or you may have beliefs that you're clinged on to. You don't want to let go of these beliefs. So you fight to maintain your separate sense of identity. But what I'm telling you is this fighting is the root cause of your suffering, and this is the addiction fuel. This is why addictions can never stop. Even when you quit one, it'll just be replaced with another one. Because fundamentally, at the root, at the core, the structure of your mind is wired in a way due to the habitual tendencies that you've acquired from when you're very, very, very young. And you've been conditioned for years and years and years and years to have an addict's mind. You have an addict's mind, so it doesn't matter if you quit cold turkey. It doesn't matter if you do a 12-step program. It really doesn't matter what you do, because the actual wiring of your mind, your habitual tendencies are wired to be addicted to external things. So what you're doing essentially is you're leaning on an external thing to make you feel happy and safe and secure. It's almost like whenever you feel uncomfortable in your life, you take refuge in some external thing. It's different for everyone. It could be smoking weed. It could be watching TV. It could be pulling up your phone and you take refuge in Instagram. You take refuge in gambling. You take refuge in playing video games. So when you feel uncomfortable in your life, you have to ask yourself, what do I take refuge in? And if it is an external thing, even if it's just a thought in your mind and you're daydreaming, if you're taking refuge in an object, an external object, to distract you from just resting and relaxing as awareness in your own being and being in the emptiness, embracing the emptiness. Not avoiding the emptiness, not being afraid of the emptiness, but realizing fundamentally at the source, you are the emptiness. And this emptiness is not a sad, depressing emptiness. It's a loving emptiness, an infinite, abundant emptiness. So when you surrender to the emptiness of your being by meditating, number one, I'm going to talk about that in a second, and just feeling the texture of your body, feeling being, instead of trying to distract yourself with an external thing, instead of taking refuge in external things, the only source of permanent refuge that is always present and that doesn't require you to crave addictions and to chase after certain forms of stimulation, the only form of permanent refuge is just being able to be present and to feel just the texture of the body. Feeling the texture of present sensation. So even this extremely loud helicopter that's flying above me, you can just feel into the actual texture of the sensation, feel the hearing of it, and just open up to it and feel each moment fully. Be here. So if you're bored, feel the boredom fully. Be bored. You have to kind of surrender to being. Whenever you'll notice, the mind is going to always crave other things automatically because that's the habitual tendency. So now we're going to get into meditation. So in order to quit your addictions permanently, you need to learn how to meditate properly. And the reason why is because meditation is learning how to rewire your mind into not immediately chase after external things to secure you, but to learn how to be aware of when the mind is leaving home and is instantly trying to search for other things to entertain you. You need to catch it. You need to catch it. When the mind is running off a leash, you need to kind of bring it back. It's like you're taming an animal. The animal's crazy. Your mind is crazy. That's why you suffer. That's why you have all these problems and addictions, and you don't feel good, and you can't control yourself, and you're always chasing after other things, and you're scrolling on your phone endlessly, and you can't stop because your mind is untamed. So there's only one way to tame the mind: the practice of meditation, which is sitting, surrendering to that emptiness. And when the mind wants to run away, catching it, labeling, thinking, and returning to the breath. So sitting, focusing on the breath, focusing on the texture of the body, feeling the body, and then noticing that the mind starts running away and starts formulating thoughts and daydreams and thinking about things, and just without judgment, noticing that, coming back to the breath. So I'm not going to give you a full meditation tutorial here. This here is how to quit your addictions forever and pull them out from the root. You need to learn how to meditate. So I have a free meditation video called Meditation for Beginners. Check that video out next, because that video shows you step by step what meditation is, why it's so important, and how to start a meditation practice for yourself so that you can just be happy and not be in bondage. So you're not bound to this untamed mind that's just addicted to all these things. You can actually get rid of addiction at the root by habituating your mind, retraining your mind in a conscious way. You're retraining the mind to be present and to abide in present experience. So check that video out. Also subscribe to the channel. I make new videos every single week about becoming the best version of yourself and living a deeply fulfilling life. We don't always talk about spirituality. We also talk about practical personal development, productivity, installing healthy habits, and just overall being an amazing human being. So if that's something you're interested in, subscribe to the channel. Check out this video here to learn how to meditate for beginners. I hope this was helpful for you. And the last thing I want to say is to actually stick with this practice. It's a long-term vision. You might say, Adam, this sounds like it's going to take so much work to rehabituate my entire mind. And I'm going to say, yeah, it is going to take a lot of work. Actually, it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do in your entire life. Nothing is going to be harder than learning how to retrain your mind. And you might say, well, Adam, then what's the point? Why don't I just kind of just accept my addictions and just be addicted and just kind of give up and throw my hands in the air and just live my comfortable, safe life? I think you already know the answer to that. There's really no reason why you can't just continue chasing your addictions over and over again. I'm not stopping you. No one's stopping you. Keep going. But at some point, you'll come to the realization that this is not how I want to live. I'm a human being. I have the potential to become amazing and to live an amazing life. I have such a high potential, and life could be so awesome, but my life isn't awesome right now because I'm a slave to my mind. Because I'm lazy. I'm not willing to go to the root of the problem. I just want quick fixes. I want temporary solutions because I'm lazy and I want to stay safe and comfortable. At some point, it's going to have to click in you that the only way to be happy permanently is to undertake a deep journey inwards. And it's going to be difficult. It's going to take time. You may have to let go of certain beliefs that are no longer serving you, that you're clinging to. You may have to move out of your comfort zone. You may struggle. It may be difficult. But the struggle of growth is way better than the struggle of suffering and lack of growth. The struggle of lack of growth is way worse. This being complacent and just sucking, basically, like not trying to grow, just wallowing in your addictions. That's way more painful. Because you know deep down that you only have one life and you want to make the most of it. You want to fully actualize your full potential. You want to be an amazing human being. You want to create art that comes from your heart. This is what you want. You want to be the best version of yourself. So the only way to do that is to gain mastery over your mind by having a long-term vision to actually commit to doing this. So this is what I help you to do here on this channel. I help you understand how this whole process works, and I give you practices and stuff that you can apply in your life to completely transform yourself as a human being. All right, so stick with me and I'll see you in the next video.